Bad lawyer jokes are an old genre, but if you're a consumer, finding a client-focused practice is serious. If you're an attorney, understanding today's ethical duty of care is critical. Anchored by current headlines and showcasing major legal minds, Ethical-ish speaks to consumers and attorneys about the modern, transparent law practice. Sponsored by Case Status, powered by LawPods.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ethical-ish. Paul Bamert here, excited to bring you another episode where we dive into the gray area about what makes the modern law firm ethical or not. Excited to be joined by Travis Meltzer. Travis, hello. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Ethical-ish. I know we put you on the hot seat in some of our webinars and at CX Summit, so we got into some fun topics over the last few months. So we thought, why not unpack a few of those on Ethical-ish? So again, for those listeners out there, we're trying to go down some of that gray area of what is current events for our law firms and what we're all facing when it comes to the future and running an ethical and highest level of legal services. So Travis, tell us about yourself. I know you're out in Arizona practicing personal injury law, but maybe you can expand a little bit beyond that introduction.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I started my law firm, Valley Injury Law, in Phoenix, Arizona in September of 22. So we are in our fourth year and we've continued to grow into Nevada. So I'm also licensed in Nevada. So we kind of started as an Arizona-esque Nevada personal injury firm. But since then, we've been able to really push into New Mexico, Utah, and Washington to really, expand that regional reach. And my history, I've been in PI space for half my career. I've been licensed for 11 years now. The first half of my career was actually an insurance defense litigation attorney. So I was a PI defense attorney, which gave me a lot of great experience, but I hated it. And so I switched sides and bounced around for a couple of the larger firms here in Arizona, and then wanted to start my own thing. And since then, it's been interesting, and especially in today's day and age, it's really cool to see all the technology you can implement into a modern day law firm.
Absolutely. And that's where it's been intriguing getting to know you and your firm. I think the first thing to point out maybe for the audience is a little bit of why is it not the Travis Meltzer injury attorney firm, right? Like why Valley Injury? I think you have a good philosophy there.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, branding. Branding's nice. It's one of those things where it's easier, in my opinion, to market a brand than it is a person. And also, two, from a practical standpoint for staff and other attorneys as the firm continues to grow, I think we've all experienced it. Any attorney that's worked for someone else, if your name's not on the wall, that client will always think there's somebody above you. And with a branded firm, no matter, whether it's directly like Valley Injury Law or it's Goofy or whatever the, million firms out there, there's not just one person above who you're talking to, because ultimately I would like to empower my staff to be a part and an embodiment of the firm, as opposed to, well, you're not Travis, so clearly there's somebody above you. So I've kind of seen that from being an associate at a couple firms. And honestly, I think my staff and other attorneys appreciate it.
Yeah, it is interesting, not only from, sort of current going concern, but also we talk a lot about legacy and how firms want to pass on generation after generation. And so I think there's a lot of strategy and foresight in that structure as well, right? Not pinning it to a single name. So interesting, but we're not here to necessarily talk about branding, always an interesting topic, but Arizona. So you're in the hotbed, I believe, the first state to basically move away from the American Bar Association 5.4, which basically, I'm the layman here, non-JD, meaning that non-attorneys can own a law firm. Is that correct? Arizona was the first state, I think, to
yeah, I believe so.
Statutory.
Yeah.
I want to say, based on my data that I was looking at, somewhere around 2020. With that said, that's the topic that I think is the interesting one. We hit on it at CX Summit a little bit about what private equity could mean to come in. Our CEO, Andy Sievers, wrote a book about fossil firm, future firm, and there's a analogy he plays to some of the healthcare space, namely the dental providers that have gone through a similar sort of private equity. I've got family in healthcare as well. My wife is a practicing physician, and it's been interesting to see over 2 decades that most physicians used to work for themselves or basically do an equity share. Now they all work for a big hospital system that is run by an MBA. So here we are in 2025. You got a few states that have passed these laws to allow in, external money. What are you seeing on the, sort of front line since you're in Arizona? Is there a little bit more of it being real out where you are?
So, yeah, I think there is a little bit more of it being real simply because it's been around, I hate to say for so long in this state, but particularly longer than anywhere else. And I think we've seen the good and the bad, but at least from from going from a solo practitioner to, a small to medium sized law firm that our firm is now, I think it's the best way to put it, the hell that we were about to deal with all of this money and coming into the state and all of these funds coming in where they can just slap on a Walmart law firm. That hasn't happened yet. I think what we've seen kind of in the front line so far is it's increased competition is what it is. And it's really, candidly, it's made it difficult, but it's also forced, I think, the market in our particular area to have more choices, which is better, I think, for the customer in the long run to allow them to have more choices. But reality is it's difficult to keep up. I mean, really what it comes down to, you already have these large firms, the Morgan and Morgans, the regional firms that are spending billions upon billions of dollars in marketing money, and then you're coming to a location like Phoenix or a large city where Morgan Morgan and larger firms do exist, but now you're having, just private equity all of a sudden appear with various names attached to their law firms. I mean, there's the Money Team law firm, you have the Floyd Mayweather law firm. There's all these interesting avenues that you would have never. You asked me this 3 years ago, I would have never thought that would have happened. But again, it makes sense. It's fortunately or unfortunately, it's turned the law firms into any other business where you see like a sports drink or you see an athlete come out with a certain sports drink and all of a sudden they're attached to it, whether they know anything about sports drinks or not. It's right now, it's been an increased competition more than anything at the foundation of it.
Yeah, and I mean, when you describe it that way, though, I think about substance versus marketing. It's one thing to take Mayweather's name and use it, name, image, and likeness to get people to say, "Oh yeah, like I'll buy a car from XYZ car dealership because they played in the NFL or they were a boxer or whatever the case might
Right.
be," right? But ultimately, you have to deliver, right? I mean, that's the thing that I find kind of ironic as I've seen a few of these folks pop up. It's like they maybe have done some fundraising, brought in some private equity, but you got to run the firm with a high quality of legal services, right? I mean, is that the big missing piece of this so far?
I think from at least the front end of it, and even just from the customer standpoint, customer client, however you want to approach it from a business or attorney perspective. But really, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a brand reputation risk or even just a market risk where the customer base and clientele have a hard time trusting attorneys already. And, whether it's life experience or caricatures of what they think attorneys do. And now you slap on, I don't know, Krusty the Clown. And here's Krusty the Clown's law firm. And it is. And it's just one of those things where I think it's really going to test the faith that the client base has in it. And you're right. I mean, I think in the long term, we don't know yet, right? I mean, these firms are still popping up. We don't know the quality that they are producing in terms of legal services. So in reality, we don't know yet. But I think you're right. I think ultimately what it comes down to is, how do they provide legal services despite whoever's paying the bills, so to speak. But you're absolutely right. I mean, they have to deliver. You have attorneys that are very experienced that are struggling with client communication or client issues. So I can only imagine when somebody who's never practiced law is then having to address those same issues.
Yeah, so noise, you're getting a lot more noise. That makes maybe doing your job a little bit harder, but it sounds like you're still navigating that fog, if you will. You just attended a recent conference where ABS was hot topic. What was the conference again,
So
Travis?
that was the Business of Law conference here in Scottsdale. I think it's the National Trial Lawyers Association is the one that
Yeah,
puts those on.
NTL Business of Law Conference. Yeah, so was ABS a big topic there?
Yeah, they actually, I wasn't able to attend the first day. The first entire day, it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Thursday was all ABS. That's all it is. And it's a way, just how to structure them in terms of how you pay what and where the money goes and more of the structuring processes behind the scenes there. So it's kind of a ethical gray area, so to speak, for sure.
but how to build your ABS, not how to play against or defend
Right.
against that kind of play, but how to basically architect your own, get into the game.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, because you're seeing, I think the future of ABS, whether it's there or not, is you're seeing much like any other industry where it's vertical integration, where you're seeing an ABS for, yeah, I don't know, we'll just call it an ABS law firm, then purchasing owning a AI company that all they do is, so instead of hiring employees, they have this. So now the AI company is technically it's just so you're seeing a lot of that vertical integration in, especially the PI space, where one party will essentially own every level, and sometimes including care, which is a whole other ethical issue. But that's what's going to end up happening, where you have that vertical integration of services, which is convenient to an extent for the business and possibly the client. But then again, then you run into all these ethical issues with conflicts and who pays who, and who takes priority when it comes to that. But really what I think the future is, it's that vertical integration that you've seen for hundreds of years in a lot of other markets.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about Arizona versus, other states, right? So I think I've seen a few cases where maybe a successful law firm outside of Arizona, sees this as an opportunity and maybe, keeps their operation in another state that hasn't, that still has the 5.4 adoption, but then gets together with some private equity, starts something in Arizona. I mean, that's, I guess, the area is it a referral business? Is it an ownership business? Are you able to operate in these other jurisdictions? That's where I guess all of the gray area and all of the details, devils in the details, has to be worked out. Is that
Yeah,
yeah, that's the
no,
gray area.
absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's exactly right. Where, yeah, I mean, ultimately, prior to all of this, I mean, obviously, bar association from bar association will have differing opinions on ethical rules. But generally speaking, you were not able to fee share with non-attorneys. That was kind of the all-encompassing, everybody had a version of that. So in turn, if you had a law firm in Arizona, and this is pre-ABS, if you had a law firm in Arizona and you open up a law firm or an office in California or Nevada, they had to respect you as a law firm. They had to identify its reciprocity. They were okay with it. Now, I think, we had chatted about it before, with a lot of states kind of trying to fight this ABS or the fee share issue, where they'll either restrict it or prevent it. So that does, that forces these ABSs to either avoid the state altogether or find other ways to do it. But the states that don't have those preventative, I wouldn't call them statutes or rules or rulings, they're allowed to basically, you start an ABS in Arizona and then you just supplant it, or put it someplace else. And you're right, it essentially becomes these referral services, where in reality it's a branded referral that hopes to bring in all these cases, and then they just piece them out to local law firms.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm a capitalist at heart. I mean, case status, we, go through the traditional fundraising rounds and try to be good stewards of our investors and sort of our mission, right? And do more and innovate. And you're constantly in this scale sort of equation. That's the interesting thing, back to the idea that like we really haven't seen a huge player just dominate. Meanwhile, you mentioned Morgan and Morgan earlier. I know we talked about them in a couple of our other, webinars and CX Summit sessions. It's funny to see how John Morgan has built his business up, obviously having, not just Florida, but gotten into, I think, all 50 states, spending as much money as Apple and Disney. I think we saw that when it comes to outside of home advertising, i.e. billboards and things like that.
Yeah.
I think it was $350 million total advertising last year. So he's built almost what is kind of like operationally a ABS, but he's an attorney. I sit here and I scratch my head. It's like, well, he's figured out scale, but he's done it under the auspices of non-ABS. Do you see that money potentially coming and knocking on his door and saying, hey, like, you want to take this really to the next level? Like, get some Wall Street money behind it. Does that even come into the art of what people think about, or what scares, I guess, the whole marketplace?
So yeah, so I think, when it comes to, private equity money being injected into the legal market from all levels and from all areas, candidly, I think, yes, I think, at least within the next 3 to 5 years, that would have be the only way that that would have happened, because I don't think offhand that there's any other law firm, at least nationally. I'm sure there's a couple firms regionally that have done something very similar to Morgan & Morgan, but not at that scale. And I think it's simply because you're absolutely right. Whatever they're doing behind the scenes, they've perfected that growth, identify a market, go in that market, and grow into that market. Now, obviously, when you have a $10 billion budget to market, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. But you're right. I mean, I think ultimately attorneys saw that coming, or whoever was in support of the ABS initially, and thought of it as a way to, again, it's this constant tug of war, but treat a law firm like every other business. Allow for the medium-sized law firms to go seek capital investment and go seek that other than just getting debt. So it allows for the smaller firms, in theory, right, to keep up, so to speak, in terms of the demand, particularly in PI, because it's such a cash-heavy and often, advancing significant money when it comes to case costs or anything like that. So it's very difficult. It's a market deterrent for people opening. And so I think with the idea and ability to receive money in exchange for ownership of your firm, and it opens up more possibilities for funding and investment and growth. So I think without that, candidly, I wouldn't see anybody competing with Morgan & Morgan anytime soon. But with this capital investment, I think this was probably the only way that they would, in theory, have competition on the national stage.
Yeah. Well, you inspire some thinking. I mean, the way I think about part of the equity is to break the status quo in many ways. And so you came from insurance defense, right? We talk a little bit about the Morgan & Morgan, sort of the injury space. I mean, to me, I don't know if this comes up, but what are the ethical lines of private equity coming in and saying, you know what, we're going to just be the broker between the Geicos and the other insurance providers and the injured, and basically, you can talk flat fee, you can talk about, I think about Carvana, right? There's a couple different ways to sell your car. You can do the one-click way, which gets you that guaranteed offer, but it's lower, or you can go a little bit more involved and try to get the higher rate. Do you think that those types of models, this idea of like a flat fee to get as much as possible, and maybe there's backstage brokering going on between what are typically foes of trial and defense? I mean, but that's got to be an ethical line that is being drawn there. What are your thoughts there? Am I getting into an uncharted space?
So definitely an uncharted space. I would consider that something that, I mean, candidly, I'm sure a lot of people have thought about it. I think when it comes to, at least in terms of the brokering portion, that's when you kind of run into the conflicts, right? Where, when you're acting as a firm, or at least with legal interests on behalf of a client, and in theory brokering, or at least getting into this deal where it's like, hey, if they sign with us, minimum you'll pay on a file like this, or however completely unethical, I think would really what it come down to. Something would crack down on something like that. That said, with the influx of AI into the legal space, into everything, but you're having AI programs or something like that can essentially handle an entire case pre-litigation without any human interaction now. So that you're seeing those things down the chute. So yes, I think there will be a lot of ethical dilemmas coming out of things like that. But ultimately, much like any other of these rules, I mean, what it comes down to is it's going to take a client to get hurt, or somebody's case to get exponentially screwed up for the public, unfortunately, to see it. And it's because people don't need us as much as, despite all the billboards, we're an emergency service. You're not going to need me every day. You're not going to, hopefully not. And candidly, throughout the course of your life, you're only going to need a PI attorney maybe once. Twice. I mean, you get into 3 car accidents, 4 car accidents in your entire lifetime. So really, you're putting a lot of pressure, I think, on the market itself and on your potential clients because they are going to be the ones testing it out. And then it's going to be up to the bar associations and people representing clients that are unfortunately on the wrong end of these mistakes, or on the wrong end of an AI attorney, for lack of a better phrase, to really see where it ends up pushing those ethical lines.
Yeah, no, I think that, to me, the interesting thing is the consumer. And again, fingers crossed, I don't want to have to come across any of you from a hiring position. So I think of Andrew Finkelstein's book, I Hope We Never Meet. I couldn't think of a better title. But obviously, I've heard the case study after case study. Obviously, there is a major service that you provide. I think the other interesting thing to think about as we think about ABS, though, is diversification of, a general practitioner. And that's where I think one of the things I'm keeping my eye on is this idea of general versus specialty. Because a lot of times you're right. Like you may be hired by somebody who's injured. You may be the first attorney they've ever hired. And arguably 3 years down the road, when they have a different need, it could be immigration, it could be, a DUI, it could be family, probate, any of that stuff. They may still come back to you for just advice. Who should I work with, right, Travis? So I think for me, one of the things that I want to keep an eye on is just if any of these entities really do get into general consumer services, that is like, what is your legal need today? Let us, just like your general practitioner in medicine, let us diagnose and get you to the right space. But what are you looking for? So again, it sounds like a lot of noise is the headline for me as we think about ABS, but what would it be that you're kind of keeping an eye on that would kind of change your tune there? Because again, I know you got a good formula, deliver high client service. It's not about billboards, it's about referrals and reviews. But what sort of thing are you keeping an eye on that might change your overall assessment of the space?
Yeah, I mean, really what it comes down to is one, candidly, especially in Arizona and even Nevada, and honestly, I think it's everywhere now. But it honestly, look at the billboards. While you'll see the Morgan and Morgans, your Stalwarts, things like that, here in Arizona, I mean, we're getting billboards pop up of these ABSs, of these larger firms or entities that are starting here. I mean, there's three or four that I could think of that popped up there. And the clients, again, it really what it comes down to is the client's awareness or lack of awareness of what they are, I hate to say, getting themselves into. Because I don't think they fully understand. I think that's an issue prior to ABS. When, just because they have a billboard doesn't mean they're a good attorney. Just because they have a billboard doesn't mean they know what the hell they're doing. So it's kind of the same thing where, they're going to this company and hoping to get personal injury legal services. And so really, I mean, I've had clients come to me from these firms that I've never talked to an attorney before. I don't know anything about it. And I've even called a couple of these offices and their staff can't tell me who their attorney is. So
Yeah.
I think it'll
Substance.
weed itself out. Right. And I think in the long term it will, but you'll see some company that will be exponentially good at it. And I think for right now, fortunately for me, you don't see it yet. Again, it's not like that the end of the world, apocalypse that I feel a lot of attorneys, probably including myself, had you asked me this 3 or 4 years ago, thought was coming. Just like the
Yeah.
flat fee PI space, the Walmart law firm, every case is $1,000. That's it. And we could just get you done for it. But ultimately, I think the dollar wins because while, yes, that's a way to price people out, they're also losing exponentially amount of money because the market itself is already willing, in theory, to pay the third that we're already making.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to play that balance where, and then also if it's cheap, what are the clients going to really think? I mean, we have somebody here that's called themselves a discount attorney. So I get the marketing,
Yeah.
but again, it's, I don't know if you want to label yourself as that, but
Well, there's always premium and there's always discount, right? There's always the
yeah.
angles there. You inspired me to keep an eye on, again, to your point, anybody can sort of pony up for a billboard, especially if you got some PE money and you're just trying to, sort of chameleon and copy what you think is the right model. I guess the other thing that I would keep an eye on is a firm that shows up that hasn't been seen before, maybe has one of these, tie-ins to celebrity or something, but they have a legitimate Google business account with legitimate reviews. Again, those can be bought too, right? So you got to figure out what's legitimate and a high rating, right? Because ultimately, I think that back to your point, your reputation precedes you as an existing legal services provider, and people will find that substance or lack of substance, and word of mouth travels. It's not like sitting at the barbershop or the restaurant in town, but certainly Google business reviews and other things online, people vote with dollar signs that way. So to me, that'll be the interesting sort of signal if we see something pop up that has, those sort of substance bones, then it'll be worth watching and taking note of. But
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's totally interesting. What else before we land this plane on ABS? Anything else that we didn't cover that we should keep our eye on going forward?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's really allowing law firms to become genuine businesses. And it's kind of a weird thing to think because just because you're a good lawyer doesn't mean you're good at running a law firm, or just because you're good at running a law firm doesn't mean you're good at, being an attorney. So I think with the ABS, it allows for law firms, and we'd seen it for years with a CEO or COO or something to that extent, but we're now allowing it allows legal to basically treat itself like any other business where, well, like Paul, you have no PI experience, but you're great at, integration and things like that. So I need a chief technical officer. And so it's great. It allows me as a law firm owner to bring that on and give you equity if that's so be it. So it's one of those things where I think that is the benefit. And I think it'll be interesting to see what firms like myself, while it's not ABS particularly, but we can still fee share with non-attorneys. So it allows for us to really expand in terms of hiring and then also bonus structure with our own staff. I've really done that. I think we've even talked about it where it's give them a percentage of the fee on any cases they bring in. So it gives them much more personal feel on the cases that they even bring in themselves. So they have, for lack of a better phrase, skin in the game too. But really, it's just going to be interesting to see where the legal field goes and how we, as non-ABS law firms, adapt and continue to compete.
Yeah. I love ending on that note. I think it is, we spent so much time in sort of the, speculating on change and what to be fearful of, but you just nailed an awesome, I think about technology. I've been in, the technology space forever. Ownership matters. Having people feel engaged in their job is one thing, but also having them feel a sense of ownership, it takes you to a different level in how you operate, because you care at a different level. And I think that's a really cool way to apply that standard for a firm like yours, to give those non-JD, staff some skin in the game. And that can be a really big upside if used properly. So really cool, Travis. Well, we appreciate you joining us on Ethical-ish. And for those of you that aren't in Arizona, next time you get out that way, definitely look Travis and his team up. They're doing some great things, and we've been excited to be part of their tech stack and getting to know them at Case Status. And again, Travis, appreciate you putting you on the hot seat. Let us know if anything changes in your backyard, and we look forward to hearing some fun Eli Manning, maybe Peyton Manning, waiting to see that PI firm sort of show up. We'll see what happens with everything that they're doing.
Thanks, Paul.
Love it. If you like what you heard on Ethical-ish, please check us out and feel free to subscribe on any of the platforms that you use. You can check us out on www.casestatus.com/podcast and get this episode and any of the other provocative topics that we've got. And if you're interested in proposing a topic or being on, reach out to me, Paul Bamert, and excited to be your host here in 2025. So Travis, appreciate the time, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Lawyers and legal consumers, you are our audience and our biggest strength. If you find Ethical-ish a good investment of your time, please spread the word. Until next time. Sponsored by Case Status, powered by LawPods.